Hello again, YouTube. This is Jay with Tap and Turn Gaming. And what this video right here will consist of is my own personal top 10 picks of cards from the M15 core set that I believe are the most relevant in the Commander format. So as you can see here in front of you, I have 9 physical cards laid down, face down. And then this card here, I don't physically own this card yet, so I'm going to represent it on my iPod with an image of the card. So, 10 cards, my top 10 picks. So I will be going down from number 10 to number 1. So without further ado, let's take a look at what my number 10 pick is for these cards. And that card is Obnixilis Unshackled. He's a 6-cost 4/4 flyer with trample. Whenever an opponent searches his or her library, that player sacrifices a creature and loses 10 life. And then also, whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Obnixilis Unshackled. I think this guy is really good. I think he's pretty underrated, actually. I don't see a lot of love for this guy, but I think he's pretty relevant. I mean, his first ability, I think, is great. Whenever an opponent searches his or her library, they lose 10 life and sacrifice a creature. I mean, losing creatures, not so much a big deal. Losing a fourth of your life just off of searching your library, that hurts. I mean, as you all know, you started 40 life in Commander. Losing 10 life just to search for a card, it may make your opponents think twice about doing it. You know, and he also gets bigger. For every creature on the board that dies, he gets a +1/+1 counter. So yeah, Obnixilis Unshackled is my number 10 pick. Moving on to my number 9 pick is Soul of Shandalar. He's a 6-cost 6/6 with first strike. With 2 abilities. One can be activated while he's in play. The other can be activated if he's in your graveyard. If you've seen my cycle review of the souls from M15, you know what this guy does. But his first ability reads, you can pay 5 and he deals 3 damage to target player and 3 damage to up to 1 target creature that player controls. And then the second ability is the same exact thing, but if he's in your graveyard, you can exile him from your graveyard to do that. In my cycle review, I ranked this guy as the number 2 soul overall out of the 6. I think he's really, really good. A 6-cost 6/6 with first strike is pretty good on its own. A 6/6 with first strike is no joke. Not a lot of creatures that go to combat with this guy are going to survive 6 first strike damage. But the fact that you can be tricky with his abilities, you know, if you play them during combat, if you attack with this guy, your opponent doesn't block, you can pay 5, make him hit for 9 essentially, and then lightning bolt one of their creatures and potentially kill it. So, I mean, I think he's very, very strong overall. I ranked him as number 2 in my cycle review, but here he is my number 9 pick of the top 10. Hey, my number 8 pick is Genesis Hydra. He costs 2 green and X. When you cast Genesis Hydra, reveal the top X cards of your library. You may put a non-land permanent card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then shuffle the rest into your library. And then whatever you pay for X, he comes into play with that many +1/+1 counters. I think this guy is really amazing. He's essentially like a Genesis Wave on a creature. You know, hence Genesis Wave, Genesis Hydra. So I'm sure Wizards of the Coast were very particular in how they named this guy. But, you know, if you, let's say you dump 10 mana into this guy for his X cost, you're going to get something onto the board. Not a lot of cards in Magic cost 10 or more, other than maybe the legendary Eldrazi's that I can think of off the top of my head. But if you dump a lot of mana into this guy, you're pretty much guaranteed to get a card. He's not as good as Genesis Wave, the spell Genesis Wave, because what that does is if you pay 10 for that card's X cost, you flip that many cards from your deck, and then any of those cards that cost 10 or less, they go into play. This guy will net you 1 card, but he's still really, really good. And if you dump a lot of mana into him, he himself is going to be really big. So yeah, Genesis Hydra is my number 8 pick. At number 7, we have Resolute Archangel. It's a 7-cost 4/4 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, if your life total is less than your starting life total, it becomes equal to your starting life total. That's pretty awesome. You know, if your opponents start dwindling you down, you start getting down there, you know, maybe like, 5, 4, 3 life, you cast this card, you go back up to 40. No big deal, just off of casting this card, or off of it entering the battlefield, rather. So if you have a deck that has some blink type abilities, maybe a Deadeye Navigator, Conjurer's Closet, Cloud Shift, Ghostly Flicker, anything like that. You start blinking this in and out of play, you're just going to keep going right back up to 40 life if you start getting too low. So unless your opponent has a way to exile this card or, remove you from the game by other means than just lethal damage, this card is really, really good. So Resolute Archangel is my number 7 pick. At number 6, we have Aether Spouts. It's a 5-cost blue instant. For each attacking creature, its owner puts it on top or bottom of his or her library. This is a pretty amazing blue sweeper. If your opponent goes to Alpha Strike you with all their creatures to try to kill you, cast this for 5. All those creatures go onto the top or the bottom of their deck. If they go on the top, your opponent's just going to draw cards that they've already seen from their deck, and they're not going to draw anything new. If they go on the bottom, then you're probably not going to see them for a long time for the remainder of the game. So Aether Spouts is really, really good, I feel. I'm not particularly too much of a blue player myself, but there's no denying this card is a very, very solid blue sweeper type card. So Aether Spouts is at number 6. Spot number 5 goes to Chord of Calling. This is a reprint from the Ravnica set. It costs 3 green and X, and it's an instant, which is amazing. It also has Convoke, which was an ability from the original Ravnica set. But what this does is it lets you search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. The Convoke is pretty amazing on this, especially if you're running a token deck. If you tap, let's say, 10 creatures, you can essentially search your deck for a creature that costs 7 or less and put it right into play. If you just use the tapping of the creatures to pay for this card. If you pay the actual 3 green from tapping lands or tapping mana rocks or whatever, and then tap 10 creatures for X, you get to search for a creature that costs 10 or less. And at instant speed. So, just the fact that you can do that at instant speed is amazing. So yeah, Chord of Calling is my number 5 pick. At number 4, we have a Johnny Steadfast. He's a new version of himself for M15. I think he's pretty amazing. He costs 4. He comes into play with 4 loyalty counters, and his first ability is +1 until end of turn. Up to 1 target creature gets +1/+1 and gains first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. Pretty amazing. If you have a creature that you're going to get in with every turn, make it bigger, give it first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. If a creature actually is able to block it, you're probably going to kill it because it has first strike. It has vigilance, so on your opponent's turn, that creature's still able to block something, and lifelink, so you're going to gain some life. So that's pretty awesome. His -2 is put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and a loyalty counter on each other planeswalker you control. Awesome. Being able to Cathar's Crusade, basically, and, pump up all your other planeswalkers if you have any other ones on the board is pretty awesome. So yeah, that's his -2. Then his ultimate is -7. You get an emblem with if a source would deal damage to you or a planeswalker you control, prevent all but one of that damage. That's amazing. You know, if you ultimate him, you basically only take 1 damage from any source for the rest of the game. You know, if your opponent swings at you with a 20/20, you're only going to take 1 damage. If your opponent, you know, goes to, you know, lightning bolt you, you only take 1 damage. Whatever it may be. No matter how much damage you take, he reduces it so that you only take 1 damage from that source. So, I mean, your opponents will have to work really, really hard to get you out of the game if they're trying to just go in for lethal damage on you, because they're only ever going to deal 1 damage at a time from each source. So, a Johnny Steadfast is at number 4. Now at number 3, like I said before, I don't actually own this card yet. But at the number 3 spot, we have Garruk, Apex Predator. This guy's amazing. New version of him for M15. He's black and green, and he has 4 abilities, which are all amazing. He comes in with 5 loyalty counters. His first ability is +1, destroy another target planeswalker. Awesome. You know, if your opponent has a planeswalker on the board that's giving you problems, activate this guy for +1 and just blow it up. Why not? Bye-bye Tameo, bye-bye whatever it may be. He will kill any planeswalker for +1. His second ability is another +1. Put a 3/3 black beast creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. Awesome. You know, being able to ramp out creatures is pretty cool. But being able to ramp out a 3/3 creature with Death Touch that's essentially a mini kill spell, just waiting to block one of your opponent's creatures, awesome. His third ability is -3, destroy target creature, you gain life equal to its toughness. Awesome, again. And that's any creature. There's no restriction on it. It doesn't say non-black, non-artifact, whatever. Any creature you want, -3 on him to destroy it, and you gain life equal to its toughness. Awesome. And his ultimate is probably one of the meanest ultimates I've seen from a planeswalker. It's -8, and target opponent gets an emblem with whenever a creature attacks you, it gets +5/+5 and gains trample until end of turn. So basically, almost kind of like Beastmaster's Ascension, but it targets an opponent, and whenever any creature attacks the opponent with the emblem, that creature gets +5/+5 and gains trample. So whoever gets that emblem, they're basically dead. They can pretty much just scoop up their cards and stop playing at that point once they are given that emblem, because you're essentially going to lose the game if it gets to that point. So yeah, Garruk, Apex Predator is my number 3 pick. Down to the last 2 cards here at the number 2 spot is Perilous Vault. It's a 4-cost artifact where you can pay 5 and tap it and exile it to exile all non-land permanents. Amazing card. Being able to exile things in EDH is really, really good. Being able to exile all non-land permanents for 5, amazing. At first when I saw this card, I wasn't a huge fan of it. You know, because it exiles everything, you know, even your things. You can essentially only use this once too, because it exiles itself when you activate it. But being able to exile things in EDH is awesome. You know, and if you use this card in conjunction with maybe like a Ghostway, you know, if you activate this card, pay 5, tap it, and exile it, you put that trigger on the stack, and then you cast Ghostway and exile all your creatures. Then this resolves, exiles all non-land permanents off the board, and then at the end of your turn, all your creatures come back. You're essentially going to win the game at that point, I feel. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tricky things you can do with this with other spells to make it so that it's one-sided. But, you know, this is just an amazing card, being able to exile everything. If you just need to get rid of everything, this card will do that for you. You know, if you're lagging behind in the game, you don't have a lot of stuff on the board, but your opponents are amassing a huge board presence, drop this, pay 5, exile it, exile all their stuff. So, Perilous Vault is at my number 2 spot. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we have Soul of New Phyrexia. If you saw my cycle review for the Souls, you saw that he was number 1, and rightfully so. He is phenomenal. I think he's the best card in M15. He's the best Soul out of all 6. He's one of the more impressive cards I've seen recently, I think, me personally. But he's a 6 cost, 6/6 with trample, and you can pay 5 colorless to make it so that permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn. And then his second ability, you can activate it if he's in the graveyard, exile him, and do the same exact thing. The reason why he's number 1 is he's essentially like an Avis in Angel of Hope if you activate him. All your stuff becomes indestructible. And this guy can go in any deck. He's colorless. He costs 6, but he's colorless. So he can go in any deck you have, any EDH deck. I plan on putting this guy in just about every single EDH deck that I have. Maybe aside from some of my tribal decks, just because I'm kind of anal about keeping them tribal, because I don't have a tribal avatar deck. But all my other decks that aren't tribal, this guy's going straight into it. You know, why not? He's colorless. He makes all your stuff indestructible until end of turn. Amazing, amazing card. So, he is my number 1. So that concludes my top 10 cards from M15 that I believe are most relevant in the Commander format. You know, some of you may agree with me, some of you may disagree with me, some of you may think that some of these should be in the top 10, but maybe they're in a different order, whatever it may be. This is just my personal take on it. You know, if you don't agree, if you agree, you know, leave me a comment in the comment section below this video and tell me what you think. But just to give another quick rundown of the cards, at number 10 we have Ob Nixilis Unshackled. At number 9 we have Soul of Shandalar. At number 8 we have Genesis Hydra. At number 7 we have Resolute Archangel. At number 6 we have Aether Spouts. At number 5 we have a reprint in Court of Calling. At number 4 we have Ajani Steadfast. At number 3, it's represented on my iPod here, just to get the picture up, we have Garruk Apex Predator at number 3. At number 2 we have Perilous Vault. And number 1, without a shadow of a doubt, I feel, some of you may agree, some of you may disagree, but my number 1 is Soul of New Phyrexia. So yeah, so that concludes my top 10 picks of these cards from M15 that I think are most relevant in Commander. Like I said, you know, some may agree, some may disagree. It's your opinion. You know, if you want to voice your opinion in our comment section, feel free to do so. We love to hear your comments, your suggestions. If any of you would change this order, or if you would take out any cards and replace them with different cards, feel free to let us know. Tell us what you think. And also, you know, throw it a like and a subscribe. We also appreciate that. But yeah, this has been Jay with Tap and Turn Gaming, and this has been my top 10 picks of cards from M15 that I believe are most relevant in Commander. Thank you for watching this video, and continue to tune into our channel for more videos. Thanks for watching.